One privilege, you get. You get to use it when anybody else. You get the gavel once a year.
Look at that. I think so too. It's very far away.
It's the nice thing about a wireless. Where do you want to put it?
So it'll come up here. Yeah, this is good. Up. Well, are people going to sit? Yeah, why don't people sit? So we'll just put it here. All right, I call this meeting to order. I even have a gavel. All right, grab that last sip of wine or wine glass. We could gather at the tables. There you go. Hi, Nancy. How are you? Good. Hey, how are you? I want to thank everyone. Can you hear me? Hear me okay? Okay. I kind of hear myself talking. I feel like I'm the announcer at a baseball game or something. And now, number 22. All right. Thank you all for being here at our annual meeting. It's, on a serious note, it's been a challenging year, to say the least, with October 7th, the following general rise in anti-Semitism, the continuing war in Israel. It's been tough, and the Jewish community is in despair. In the U.S., abroad, can you hear? I see Phyllis looking. Is that better? Is it too loud? Is this better? What if I just talk loud? Is that good? Okay. 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 Okay, but if I don't have to hear it being amplified and they'll hear me?
I think so.
Okay. All right. We'll hope so. We'll assume so. Anyway, the tough year that it's been and the tough situation for the Jewish community really hammers home even more how important it is to have a strong Jewish community to support each other. And Temple Jeremiah goes a long way towards being that Jewish community for us and supporting each other in tough times. While it's been a challenging year, Temple Jeremiah has really stepped up under difficult circumstances. We started the year without a cantor, but thankfully Amy stepped up, and she was able to be there for holidays for B'nai Mitzvah, and really added her beautiful music and made it incredibly meaningful. So thank you to Amy. She's not here, but I'd thank her if she was. Okay, more. Okay. The board also stepped up in putting together our very important cantorial search committee, and we are thrilled to have Cantor Liana Mendelson joining us very soon. Rabbi and Danny will say not soon enough, but July 1, Cantor Mendelson will start and heads up for different opportunities to have a meet and greet with Cantor Mendelson over the summer. The board also has had incredibly hard work this year, and I'm really happy about the advances we've made in bringing the committee structure back to life post-COVID, and I'm looking forward to really getting that reinvigorated and having more engagement of our members as we go into the next fiscal year. That's something that I'm really looking forward to. We have a few pieces of business, a few persons to celebrate, and then we have the pleasure of having Corey Franklin, who put a compilation of many essays that he wrote together for a book during COVID, and we're lucky enough to have him that he's going to speak to us about his book. So we look forward to that. But we'll start off with a Devar Torah. Rabbi?
Thank you, Steve. Oh, my goodness. Is it echoing because I'm speaking? It's not me. Is it you? Ah, okay. Right. That's the classic line. I invite you to join with me in the blessing before study. It's the same opening 10 words as most Hebrew blessings that we say before we do something, up to the word vitzivanu. And then we add the specific tag for study, la'asok b'divrei Torah, which means to busy ourselves or engage with the words of Torah. And you can also choose to say Amen at the end, which counts you into the blessing as well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We find ourselves in this period of time of the Omer, the counting of the Omer. It is a time between our celebration of Passover and our celebration of the physical redemption of our people from the slavery of Egypt to the freedom of the Promised Land. And it unites the, whoa. I don't know. I think it just went, is it better? Oh, they say it's better. I think you should run another lap around the sanctuary. Okay. All right. So that takes us from that doesn't sound better to me. Does it sound better to you? Okay. It's loud, but it's not echoey. Okay. It's very strange because I can hear myself coming out of the speaker. Maybe over here? No. All right. Where was I? Passover, Egypt, leading up to our celebration of Shavuot, which is the festival in which we celebrate the giving and the receiving of Torah, really a spiritual journey that we engage with in Torah. So we have this sense of the ends of a spectrum from the physical to the spiritual. And then in the Torah portion for this week, Bahar, we have a focus on a different kind of counting. So the counting that we do between Passover and Shavuot is a counting of 7 times 7 weeks. So we have 49 days that lead up to the 50th day, which is Shavuot. In the Torah portion, we have counting as well, but the counting is not necessarily of time between Shavuot and Passover, or Passover to Shavuot, but the counting that we do is a counting for the land. The sabbatical year, the Shemitah, the 7th year, and then the Jubilee year, the 7 times 7 Shemitahs, these sabbatical years where we let the land lay fallow, where in that 50th year, it's like a giant reset button. Everything goes back to, all the land goes back to its original owners, so that there's an opportunity to make sure that no one is perpetually impoverished. And also to recognize that the land really doesn't belong to anyone, that it ultimately, as with all things, belongs to God. And it is through that ritual of counting the sabbatical years that we reaffirm that notion. And so we move from the physical to the spiritual also with the idea of this sabbatical year, of letting the land lay fallow, and then in the Jubilee year, having it return to original owners. The sense that the material doesn't really belong to us, the time does. And what we do with that time, how we treat it, the sanctity in which we imbue our time is really paramount. And what the counting of the Omer and the counting of the sabbatical years reminds us of is that we have to approach life with intention, to be aware not just of time and not just of the passing of time, but to be aware of how we use our time and our relationship each day with the material. And so as we embark on this journey of looking back to the year that was, to the year that is to come, my hope and my prayer is that we will do so with not just a counting of days and not just of looking at the weeks as they pass from one to the other, but that we'll do so with mindfulness and with intention, lifting up that which is sacred and moving together as one. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. We have one piece of business that the board has to pass, which is to have the minutes from our April 24th meeting be part of our permanent record. The minutes were uploaded to Teams. I'll be under the assumption that everyone read the minutes. Is there a movement to adopt the minutes? Jerry, a second. Greg, all in favor? Aye. Any against? Any abstained? The minutes are part of the record. Terrific. I invite Scott up, our immediate past president, Scott Levin, and chairman of the nominating committee to present our slate.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have the list up, Danny? So I'm going to forget members of the nominating committee if I try to say everyone by name. So I'm just going to say thank you to the nominating committee. It was an incredibly dedicated group that was there for the meetings and very engaged in the process. And, you know, this was more work than I anticipated. And it was incredibly rewarding as well, because I got to meet and speak with over coffee or on the phone if necessary, just about what is bringing our new board members to the board. And it's not just the dedication to Temple Jeremiah, but something always deeper and beyond that, whether it's being a role model for their family or what happened on October 7th or just building the Jewish community. I hereby present to the membership of Temple Jeremiah through our recording secretary, Aileen Frost, the slate, and here is the nominating committee. And then the officers slated for 1 year to be ending June 25th is our President Steve Kleiman, Executive Vice President Avi Greenfield, Vice Presidents John Fellman, Aileen Frost, Tanya Silverstein, Jerry Tater, and Sue Weitzman. And then Alyssa Rogers will be moving from the board to the executive committee. We have Brian Rubin assuming the treasurer role, and our recording secretary, Greg Richards. And then we have the nominating slate, which are our board members slated to serve for 3 years. So this includes board members that have served 3 years and their term is up and they've re-upped for another 3 years. And that's Ilan Adler and Barb Kite and Dan Verona. And then we have 6 new board members. And if you're here, just wave. We have Ashley Blankstein Delaney, and Lisa Fishbane, and Kim Ratkin, Justin Shepard, and David Wayne. And Nancy Eisenberg. There you are. So that's our wonderful slate for the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Next up is our treasurer, Sue Weitzman, who will present our budget for a vote. Here you go, Sue.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sue Weitzman, and once again, it's my privilege as your Temple's current treasurer to present a balanced operating budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Wanted to note some highlights of this fiscal year's budget. Slide 1, please. Great. I wanted to share with everyone the income side, left side of this slide, and just tell you a few areas of how the Temple does receive income. You see the first line, that's member commitment. is budgeted at almost $1.7 million and comprises 65% of the total income the temple receives. We are projecting membership for next year to stay about even and asking for a $40 increase in the membership commitment, which is about 1%. Also, for new members, we are entering the 5th year of our new membership model, in which a new member's first year commitment is reduced by 50%, and then the second year's commitment is reduced by 25%. This program has been a very appreciated and successful piece in attracting new members. Within the facility income piece of the budget lies the security fee that each member pays to help offset the rising cost of the security personnel. And we know the temple hires security to ensure that each one of us and our fellow congregants, can exist and learn and worship in a safe and secure environment. And we thank them very much. The fundraising and development income piece of the budget is expected to increase by 10%. And this increase is due to you through annual fund gifts, purchase of memorial plaques, and the continued success of the community's giving during the High Holy Days worship. I'd like to comment on the budgeted income in the miscellaneous income line. That's $63,000. As written in the temple's bylaws, to help offset certain expenses, we use the interest and dividend income earned in the previous calendar year from both the temple's general endowment and building endowment for the fiscal year operating expenses. And so they will be used to offset some operating expenses for next year. And quickly onto the expense piece of the budget, which is slide 4. As you can see, human resources accounts for 75% of the budget of projected expenses. This percentage has been very consistent over the past few years, and I want to really affirm that the temple's financial condition remains truly very, very strong. And we should be very proud of the amazing Temple Jeremiah community that we all are a part of. A heartfelt appreciation from me and I think everyone in this room for our clergy, our staff, teachers, our lay leaders, and committees who work tirelessly throughout the year to provide us all a welcoming and nurturing community for our students and our families. So thank you. So Steve, thank you for the privilege. Steve Kleiman for a vote.
Very good. Sue, thank you very much. This was a follow-up to our board meeting presentation last month, which was much more detailed with the full schedules attached for everyone to review, and we took questions and whatnot. But thank you for the summary. It was very informative and helpful. And at this point, since this was presented by a committee, my understanding is we do not have to have this, we don't have to have a movement for this, but we just need to have a vote. So board members, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? And the budget's passed for 2024-2025. Thank you to everyone in the Budget Committee for your hard work, and we look forward to a successful year going into next year. The next item on the agenda is the Toddy Gray and Diane Mary Katz Scholarship Awards, and I'm going to hand that off to Rabbi Heaps. Where is Rabbi Heaps? Here she comes, hustling down.
The computer's all the way over there.
There you go.
Thank you. So just a little bit about who this scholarship is in honor of. Toddy Gray is the mother of Jim Gray and Bobby Katz, two continuing members of our community, and the mother-in-law of Martha Gray, grandmother to Larry and Stephen and Kiki Katz, Amanda and Brian Kirsch. There's there's a lot of people in her family that have been essential and continuing parts of our community. And Toddy Gray was the first member of her family to attend college, and she went to Northwestern University, where she met her husband, Milton, and she was a warm and loving person who really put her children and her husband and her grandchildren and put her family first. She knew the importance of education, and she knew the importance of building the community that she was with together with her family. And Diane Mary Katz was only 32 years old when she passed away. She was the daughter of Bobby and Paul Katz and the sister of Larry and Stephen. And her family described her as smart and sensitive and was another person who knew that importance of family. And when she was confirmed here at Temple Jeremiah, and she graduated Glenbrook South High School and then attended Wesleyan University. And after she graduated from college, she spent her time working in New York and then came back here to Chicago, where she also studied at Northwestern University. Diane loved to travel and often thought nothing of just picking up and going cross country all by herself. And she even went to Vietnam all on her own. And so Jim Gray and Bobby Katz, Bobby, whose birthday is tomorrow, so she's not here today, but Jim is, they set up this scholarship so that their loved ones would continue to be remembered and continue to be honored, and the things that they found important of family and education and building community together, especially here at Temple Jeremiah, would continue in their name. And it is an honor to present their scholarship to two wonderful students, Alex and Ellie. And both Alex and Ellie have been here since pretty much the day they were born. They have been educated here, they have volunteered here, they have given their time and their curiosity, they have helped siblings find their time and curiosity here. They are the example of what we want our students to be, not just here at Temple, but out in the world. Alex has been involved in Camp Shy, on the Voices, it's not a committee, it's a program. He was one of the MCs at Springboard's 18 Under 18 this year. And Ellie has been a madrija in her mom's classroom. She has helped her younger brother get here, even when he maybe forgot to wake up on time. She made sure that he still got here on time. And both of them have been a part of their families here, have been a part of the things that their families love, whether it's volunteering with Backpack Blessings or helping our youngest students find their way around the hallways when they're like this big and the hallways look this big. They've been here for every moment of their Jewish life, and we're so excited to see them continue that in their next iteration of what school and Jewish life looks like. And the order is to come back and to tell us about how great, thank you. We should all just do more of that. But to come back and make sure that we keep learning from each of you and from each of your experiences. So Alex and Ellie, if you'll come forward, I get to give you this scholarship tonight. You don't have to wait. There you go. There you go. Thank you for just being here. There you go. I feel really short next to both of you. Thank you. It's actually a little better. Okay. Usually I'm the shortest.
Thank you. All right, our next item is the Robert H. Goldberg Volunteer of the Year Award. Bob Goldberg, my understanding, was one of the original founders of Temple Jeremiah, also a past president. And the lore is that on his 100th birthday, he was still actively participating in volunteering at Temple. So Temple decided we should have the Volunteer of the Year Award named in honor of Bob Goldberg, now in memory of Bob Goldberg. To present this wonderful honor, I'm going to hand it off to Rabbi Cohn.
I'm going to riff for just a minute or so because our honoree is on her way. So she's, but I did want to recognize Jim and Martha Gray, who are here as part of the Toddy Gray family. I just want to make sure that they're, and Stephen, who is, was Diane Mary Katz's brother, who's here as well, and Bobby's son. And just to say how fortunate we are to have the generosity of your families in honoring your loved ones and being able to continue to pay that forward. And I'm sure Ellie and Alex, if you haven't already met them, you will meet them as well. And so Bob Goldberg was an incredible figure, certainly in my coming to Temple Jeremiah. I remember the very first time that I sat down with a couple of past presidents. It was Bob Goldberg of blessed memory and Ed Cadden of blessed memory. And Lisa has been, Steve mentioned that being without Cantor, that Lisa really stepped forward in the choir, especially, but she's been involved in volunteering in so many ways with inclusion and with all the many things that we do with education. And but this year especially, in stepping forward and working with Paul Dykstra, our music director, with Greg Richards, helping with the technology piece of it, but really organizing the music and cataloging it and making it accessible and really allowing the choir to soar to new heights. And this year, for those who have been privileged to be at a worship service or at a program where a choir has sung, you know that it just is magnificent. And Paul certainly is, as director, the voices as well, but it doesn't really happen without somebody who's helping to bring all the pieces together. And so on behalf of the congregation, we present you with this Volunteer of the Year Award. Thank you so much, Lisa, for all you do and all you will continue to do at Temple Jeremiah.
Mazel tov, Lisa. That pretty much wraps up our meeting. Good and welfare, anyone out there? I would like to add a good and welfare, which is just a heartfelt thank you to everyone on the board for all your hard work this year and your dedication, everyone on the board and all the officers in the executive committee, for your hard work and dedication in helping me so much to get through year number 1, check. And I'm really looking forward to year number 2, with the board and with our so many wonderful 6 new board members. It's going to be a wonderful year. So thank you everyone. Excuse me. Thank you to everyone very, very much. And with that, I will use the gavel and adjourn the meeting. But there's more. We are blessed to have our very own Corey Franklin in the house. Corey is a writer and compiled essays during COVID, which turned into a book that he has out right outside the door here. And with that, I would like to welcome Corey to come up and say a few words and talk about his book. Be wonderful. Thanks so much for being here, Corey.
Thanks very much, Steve. Thank you. I want to thank the rabbi and the congregation for having me. I'm not going to bore you with a reading, because hopefully you will buy the book, and it's a nice book, and I can tell you a little bit more about it, so I'll take some questions. I just want to give you one anecdote that just happened to me. I just got back with my wife from, oh. Okay, can you hear this? Okay, beautiful, okay. So I just got back from Western North Carolina. I was visiting my son and my grandkids. And my wife and I went there, and we went to their shul in Boone, North Carolina. It's a beautiful area if any of you have been there. And the shul it's a small, intimate place. And we went to Friday night services, and they introduced us, and everything. And the rabbi came over to us, and he shook our hands, and he said, "How y'all doing?" And I said, Rabbi, I've been to a lot of services, a lot of shuls in my life, but that's the first time I've ever been asked that question. And I knew I could tell you that tonight. So anyway, here's the COVID diaries. I was former director of medical intensive care at Cook County Hospital. My co-author is Robert Weinstein, who's one of the top infectious disease guys in the country. Many of these essays were in the Chicago Tribune. Some of them were in some of the other newspapers across the country and some of the websites and everything like that. And what they are is a compendium of COVID as it happened. And we did this deliberately because one thing we knew would happen was that when the pandemic was pretty much over, and it's pretty much over, I mean, we can talk about that if you have questions, you'd get the second guessing, and you'd get everybody saying, well, this is what we said at the time, and this is what we really believed in everything. And since these are written and dated when they ran in the forums, you can see what was actually going on. So there's stuff in here that's wrong, but as it evolved over time, we were able to correct the mistakes, and we were able to, the last essay is about 4 months old, and we were able to get it to the state of the art. But the point is that you can read it historically as a living historical memory, and we tried to cover every aspect of it as much as possible, and most importantly, we tried not to be political. Bob's a great scientist. Maybe I'm not as good a scientist as him, but we tried to be as non-political as possible and analyze this in the best way we could from the standpoint of infectious disease, intensive care, and general medical information. We'd both been through the AIDS pandemic. It's mentioned in here. So that's what the book is about. Like I said, it's a nice book. Personally inscribe everybody's copies when they leave, but what I'll do is I'll just take questions for a couple of minutes. Any question you want to ask about COVID, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Can't guarantee the answers won't be dumb, but there's no such thing as a dumb question, and I'll try to answer them as honestly as possible. So whatever you have, I'll take your question.
The beginning of COVID was crazy. I like when let me bring the groceries in without walking,
Right.
without cleaning off the groceries.
Right.
So is it now a revelation that, God forbid this happens again, that we're going to approach it different, do you think, as opposed to how we approached it then? It was a complete and total panic?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're talking about the winter, spring of 2020, January, February, March. Well, here's the problem. I was just reading a couple of columnists in the New York Times this week, including John Barry, and John Barry wrote one of the definitive books on the 1919 pandemic. And the problem is, yeah, he's looking at it like they were looking at it 4 years ago, and that's wrong. I mean, but the other half of that is, the one thing I can guarantee you is the next pandemic, whenever it happens, will be unique. Whatever organism it is won't be transmitted exactly the same way. It won't have the same mortality. It won't affect the same people. So how many lessons were learned by people? That's one of the things you can get from reading the book. When you read today, everybody has all the answers, and meanwhile, I don't think their answers are even now that good. The quick answer to your question is, yeah, they may make you wash off your groceries and not take your mail for days, and it wasn't right then, but to give a little due, at the very beginning, we didn't know that. In January, February 2020, we didn't know that. And we learned pretty quickly about that, and we learned that was not right. But I can't guarantee you that they won't do the same thing again, or that the same thing might not be effective. Yeah, Charles.
What's the thinking now about the, oh my. What's the thinking now about the use of Paxlovid if I'm newly diagnosed as having COVID?
Well, the short answer is I don't know. You have to understand that right now we're at the lowest COVID incidents that we've been since the very beginning of the pandemic, and the numbers are only going down, okay? So Paxlovid is for high-risk individuals with moderately severe COVID. I would imagine, if I was asked, to recommend it in that situation today because it was somewhat effective. But it's not happening very much, and by the time things get active again, if they get active again, it may be a different variant. Many things may be different, so that might not be the right thing. If it was today, I would probably say if you were in that small niche group and you were pretty sick, I would take it, or I would prescribe it. But other than that, no. Yes, ma'am. Danny, rather than run, I'll just,
This is my exercise.
So
I mean, I can repeat the questions if you want.
many years ago when I was in college, I took a class called The History of Pandemics.
Yes.
And I took a class on the Black Plague. And I'm actually, like what you had just said, just sparked the idea that this plague, the way that it's hitting, the mortality rate and the easing is actually following the same similar timeline as the Black Plague. Do you know anything about this, or is there anything you can comment on that?
There are certain things that are common to all of these pandemics, and there are certain things that are unique. The prologue to this book is about 5 pages of the pandemic during the Peloponnesian War in 431 that was described as well as any pandemic by Thucydides. And it was the people in Athens contracted some plague, we don't know what it was, while they were being sieged by Sparta. And you read his description, and you're reading a lot of things that were not only true during the Black Plague, but were true today. Yeah. Different organisms, different things, whatever it was, but there are certain common behaviors, certain things that, a lot of people caught it by taking care of other people. There was a general louche behavior in the population, so there were all sorts of things. And the one thing that I predicted at the beginning of the pandemic, which I think was true, was if you look at the Black Plague, the most important thing about it, I'm telling an expert, is that it changed our entire society. Now, COVID probably didn't do that as dramatically, but yeah, it changed our society as well. So that's one of the things that happens. And there are some common things, not so much physiologic as psychologic and social. Fair answer?
Thank you, yeah.
There's Scott. I worked with Scott on the COVID committee.
Doctor. Looking back over the 4 years, what would you say is the biggest win, and what would you say is the biggest loss?
Well, the second half of that is the easiest thing to answer. The biggest loss in the United States was the educational break because we were out of school for so long. And scores and socialization, and my wife's a college counselor, she sees it in her kids, there's no question. That was the biggest downside of what happened, even in the sense that we had 1.2 million people die. The biggest break, I would say, was probably the development of the vaccines, because they were especially effective. There were some problems with them. There still remain some problems, but I would say the development of the vaccines and the fact that we were able to do it that quickly was probably the biggest upside. Biggest downside, in my opinion, without question, was the educational consequences which we faced here in North America and in some of Western Europe.
I don't have a factual basis for this, but it appears that
It's never stopped me, so don't worry.
But it appears and it feels like the medical system has really changed quite a bit. We wait months to get appointments for specialists. You walk into the hospitals and it is, generally speaking, they're not well staffed. What do you foresee for our medical system?
Boy, I wish I knew the answer to that question.
That's
Some of
okay
that-
if you don't.
Some of that may be a consequence. I mean, I happen to agree with you on a generic basis without data. But yeah, I mean, that's the experience of people that I always see and talk to and everything like that. Some of that may be related to COVID, but some of that's related to the way that things are going in the entire medical system, the takeover of physician practices, the takeover of hospitals, the bureaucratization of medicine, the technological imperatives, some of which is good, but a lot of which is not good. So I'm a pessimist at heart. I think it will get worse before it gets better, but I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I really hope I'm wrong, but I tend to agree with you on your observation. How much of that was related to COVID? Some, but I think it was going to happen anyway.
Unfortunately, the CDC, which was a revered organization before the pandemic, took a huge hit, as did many other scientific institutions. So can you talk about the implications of that for public health going forward? I'm trying not to be political about it, but it seems like it's pretty dire.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I knew people who worked at the CDC. Bob knew a lot of people who worked at the CDC. They did take a huge hit. Some of that was warranted. They deserved what they got to a certain extent. If the worst thing that happened during COVID was the educational consequences to our youth, the second worst thing was the loss of public trust in our health people, in the CDC, the WHO. But like I say, a lot of that they brought on themselves. They were overconfident at times. They said things without, knowing what would happen. The best example of that is they were selling the vaccines when they came as preventing transmission and acquiring COVID. And that was, the CDC was pushing it. And Rachel Walensky, who I don't know, but Bob does know, said when she was the ID person at Mass General, she was a fairly straight arrow, didn't go out on the limb too much, but, she got carried away, and the whole community got carried away. And it wasn't until July 4th, 2021, when a bunch of people went to Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is apparently a big party community, and they all partied, and it happened to be raining, and so they were all indoors, and all these people were vaccinated, and bang, 1,000 people contracted COVID. And that ruined the story before that about transmission and acquisition of COVID. Now, the vaccine probably attenuated their symptoms, and people's lives were probably saved, but didn't do much for the credibility of the CDC when they said, if you get vaccinated, you're not going to get this, and that wasn't true. So there were a lot of things like that. And it's going to take a long, long time to rebuild that trust. I mean, years and years and years, in my opinion.
Hi. What's your feeling on people that have the vaccine to continue to get boosters?
Well, my short answer to that is ask your doctor. But if you're asking me right now, the incidence is low enough and the variants are not very severe right now that I might ride it out. Now again, if you're in a high-risk group, if you're older, if you're immunocompromised, I would say probably do it. But for your general everyday people right now, my personal opinion is I think I would ride it. But my generic answer is see what your doctor says. If your doctor recommends it, I'm not going to tell you I think it's the wrong thing to do. But I'm just I'd ride it right now unless I was in a very high-risk group. That might be the wrong answer, I just don't know. That's the problem, you don't know what the right and wrong answer is. That's the best I can give you based on what I know.
Corey, I was really impacted by the Ebola scare in 2014.
Yeah.
But I don't think that really helped prime us for COVID coming 6 years later.
Right.
Do you think that we've made significant changes for the next pandemic, given what we've been through now?
Well, the thing about Ebola was that it's so severe when you get it, and it's so obvious when you get it, that people know to take action right away. One of the things that surprised people about this in the early days was that transmission was either asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic, and no one anticipated that. So they spent billions of dollars in the United States and huge amounts of money in South Korea on contact tracing, because that's what we did during AIDS, and that made sense. And contact tracing was worthless, because you don't know who has it, you don't know who you got it from, you don't know who the contacts are that may be getting it. It was, again, for a little while it might have been reasonable, but if you thought about it for more than a couple of minutes, contact tracing wasn't going to work. And the reason it's going to work is it's not like Ebola. Ebola, you get it, you know it pretty soon. And the interesting thing is the first case in the United States of Ebola was missed immediately because the doctors didn't take a good history, because they relied on the computer history that a nurse took. So they didn't ask the patient if he'd been to, I think, whatever African country it was. You're going to have that. That's going to happen. I mean, it's not good medicine, but you play the cards you're dealt, and that's what people do sometimes. So the next one is going to be different. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be different, you know. The worst thing, you know, one of the lines in the book is, generals are always fighting the last war, and public health people are always fighting the last pandemic. So that's what's going to happen. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know yet.
Should we expect more changes to the protocols that you have to take when you get COVID? I feel like they've constantly changed.
They're going to loosen up for a while. It's going to be a lot looser. It's not the flu, but it's getting more and more like the flu. It was never the flu. People tell you it was the flu. That's wrong. But it's getting more and more like the flu, and people are getting looser. You know, one of the reasons that it has died so much is natural immunity, because 90% of the United States has had COVID. You know, there's a 10%, maybe 15% have, but once 90% has had COVID, that builds up a lot of immunity. It's not perfect, but then you put that together with vaccination, you put that together with narrowing variants, and so it's not as bad a situation as it was 2 years ago, and certainly not as bad a situation as 4 years ago. And I think you're going to see that reflected in the guidelines. Yeah.
So the reporting continues on the possible origins of the virus,
Yeah.
whether it maybe even have been a purposeful creation, enough to make an Oliver Stone movie. The question I have is, does it matter? And if it does matter, are there steps that can and should be taken to help, you know, prevent, you know, subsequent viruses from being accidentally created or transmitted?
The origin of COVID, which I just wrote an article about that a month ago. Okay. Right now it's 50-50. You know, the two theories. Natural host, you know, bat to natural intermediary animal to man. The other one is lab leak, okay? Engineered lab leak, maybe not even engineered, but lab leak. It's about 50-50 right now. Now, if you were to get me into a tavern and I said, don't quote me on this, I'd lean lab leak. But I would never write that because, again, science. The thing against the natural development from animals is no one has found that intermediary animal. And it was also first found, at least we think, in a food thing in Wuhan, which was 10 miles away from the lab. The thing about the lab leak is it's very hard to prove that unless someone can come up with, you know, hardcore good information. Does it make a difference? I would say yes, but before I say that, if it was natural, you still want to make sure that all your lab procedures are as tight as possible. If it was a lab leak, you still want to make sure that all those food, what do you call it, and everything like that, that those things are closed down or monitored better. So in that respect, no, it doesn't make a difference. But you're talking about someone that's killed 7 million people worldwide. Someone should be held accountable, depending on what the actual origin was. Yeah, there are things that maybe we would do differently based on that, if it was natural or if it was lab leak. And so it does make a difference for a number of reasons. But the general things we would do, we're still going to do regardless of which is the right theory. And I don't know the right theory. And it's interesting because most of the public health people lean towards natural because the numbers are on their side. Most pandemics have occurred through, animals and crossover. But most of the journalists and most of the intelligence community is much more suspicious because that's the way they are. So I don't know the right answer. I'd love to know the right answer. I'm not sure we will find the right answer, but we might. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
This is such a general question, but you talked about what we learned societally.
Yes.
And basically that was the devastation of our school system.
Yes.
What about public health? And has public health learned anything? I mean, I know it's.
I can give you a short answer to that, and the short answer to that is I don't know. If there's one thing public health should have learned, and they should have known before this, it's hubris can be deadly. They should have had some natural humility, and there wasn't that much natural humility in the medical community and in the public health community, and some of that was devastating. So the specific facts of what we should know, yes, we should probably pay more attention to small particle transmission because this was transmitted in large measure, not completely, by inadequate ventilation and close contact during situations of inadequate ventilation. And some of the recommendations turn out to be ridiculous. Keeping the bars open but closing the beaches, I don't think so. I think, your public health people, and we interview and we work with a lot of public health people. Some of them are going to get it. Is the community going to get it? Hey, you know what? That's a question lay people should be asking them all the time because you should be holding them accountable for this. I mean, seriously.
I worry about public health and the whole public health system. I think we all should.
Yeah.
And the question is, are there ways that public health can recover from this?
Well, they got to win back public trust. And, I think the best ways to do that is be open, be honest, answer people instead of trying to shut people up, have a little more humility, a little less hubris, and have a lot of contact with the public, I mean, it's the same with doctors except times 5. So it depends a lot on the personalities of the people. And if the right personalities are in charge of public health, it's going to go better than if the wrong personalities are. And, and the media doesn't help, because the media in some respects, it's sort of like, a force multiplier for that hubris. So, I mean, the public has to ask questions, and the public has to, demand answers, and you have to tolerate a little ambiguity. I mean, hey, that's part of the game. I mean, I worked intensive care for almost 30 years, You got to tolerate ambiguity. You don't always know what the right thing to do is, and you got to work with that uncertainty. That's the way it's going to be with public health. I don't know how they're going to respond. Thank you. Like I say, you'll have a lot more answers in here, and I will personally inscribe everybody's copy if they buy one. And we're working with the bookstall, and the bookstall in Winnetka is a great place. If you've never been there, take a visit, not just for this book, but for a lot of other stuff. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Corey. You just said that everything that I was going to say, which is that there's a wonderful, is Nicole still here? Okay, from the bookstall, and there are copies available for purchase and for signing. Nicole is right there. There he is. Okay, and just to thank Corey not only for being here tonight, but for all that he brought to the COVID task force that Scott put together. It's hard to believe. March 15th of 2020, we locked down. Purim was the last celebration, public celebration that we had in March of 2020, and here we are. I mean, it's quite amazing, and we were meeting regularly and trying to figure out what were the best decisions at the time, and I think we were pretty good in deciding and helping people navigate this and when to bring folks back into Temple and how to bring them back into Temple. And we did some things that were probably silly. We put up big plastic partitions on the bima, and who knows if that helped or not. But we're hopefully learning. But great thanks to Corey and to everyone. So I turn it back to Steve.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. I think that's a wrap. So thank you to everyone for being here. And that's a wrap for this fiscal year, and we look forward to the next fiscal year. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night.